So I have had one brutal day. Woke up at 4 a.m. after going to bed at 2 with an upset stomach. Really wasn't able to get any sleep. But we got to push out a video, and this is a video that I really want to do about Patchy Mix finally signing with the UFC and already having a bout scheduled. When this whole thing with PFL went down, we knew immediately it was only going to end one way. The stars are going to go to the UFC. Maybe a few of them will go to a surprise organization like one. I'm not even going to say GFL, but Patchy Mix is different. Now, now to go over to the slide. Patchy Mix is a big deal. He's 20 and 1, 31 years old, and this is the biggest difference. Like Patricio Pitbull signing with the UFC was big, and then he went on to fight Yair Rodriguez at UFC 314 a few weeks ago. Looked terrible in that fight, but him being 31, him being early on in his career, being an interim bantamweight champion, winning the Grand Prix in 2023, and the records he has at bantamweight, most stoppages in bantamweight history was 6, most submission wins was 5. He may be one of the greatest grapplers we have ever seen in MMA, and we will have to see how that translates in the UFC. He trained at Extreme Couture with Marab, as well as trained with Umar Nurmagomedov in the past. And he's engaged to Tatiana Suarez, which I figured that out today. So he has ties in the UFC. A bit like Paige Van Zandt's husband. Austin Vanford, I think. Yeah. But we we were hearing about Patchy Mix coming to the UFC for a while. Really, when Sean O'Malley won that belt, Patchy Mix called out Sean O'Malley and said, "I am the best bantamweight in the world," and many people do believe that. And with Mix being an extremely good grappler, Sean O'Malley being a really good striker, it's a very interesting matchup, especially when you take into account Patchy Mix's only loss was his first fight for the Bellator title, where it was a close fight. It was a close decision, which we're gonna get into. You look at his record, debuted debuted professionally in 2016, won by unanimous decision, got 2 rear naked chokes in his second and third fight, beat Nick Gonzalez by unanimous decision, and kind of just went on a tear in King of the Cage. When his highlights were coming out, I paid a little attention to him. I'm not gonna act like I am the biggest hardcore on YouTube. I spend majority of my day watching fights, but I'm not like Weasel or any of the other breakdown channels. I do more. I go to the gym, I have friends, whatever. But Patchy Mix re- is a serious problem. Nebar Keith Richardson KO'd Terrell Galloway. Submitted Ricky Bandejas. Submitted Isaiah Chapman in the first round. Submitted Yuki Motoya in the first round. And then he faced Juan Archuleta in September 2020 for the Bellator belt, his first attempt. And he loses by decision. He did really good in the first 2 fights, or first 2 rounds. Juan Archuleta took over in the last 3, but he rebounded from that. Beat Albert Moraes, submitted James Gallagher, who, again, James Gallagher was a big star, had Connor back in him. It's a really good win. And then he beat Yoichi Horiguchi by unanimous decision as well. Another good win. His last four fights in Bellator, though, and this is important, submitted Magomedov by a guillotine choke in the second round in December of 2022. This is around the time when the PFL deal happened. I forgot what year that happened, to be honest. Then he fights Ralph Young Stotts, KOs him in the first round with a knee to the head, submits Sergio Pettis, brother of Anthony Pettis. Another guy I actually really want to see come back to the UFC, if it is possible. And then he beat Magomedov by split decision in a close rematch. Now, I want to go to the one Archuleta loss. It's only lost in his career, but when I went back and I watched this fight yesterday and I took my notes, Patchy did really good in the first two rounds. First round especially. He controlled him controlled Ron Archuleta on the ground, got to the back, and it was mainly him controlling him. Not very much damage. Round two, Patchy traded a little bit on the feet, got a takedown at 430, which Juan was able to get in reverse guard from and fight the legs. Patchy then got a figure four around the body, which Juan really had to dig deep to get out of, and finished the round, landing some good shots from top mount. I saw Patchy Mix won round two, and the judges ended up giving him round two. Juan got cut on his eye, but found rhythm on the feet as Patchy Mix advanced. And that was the main thing that stuck out to me. Although Patchy Mix was, for majority of the fight, the one advancing, the one closing the cage, Archuleta was doing a really good job using biggest boxing, outlanding him, and he was landing a lot of really good combinations where Patchy Mix was only able to get a leg kick to the body. He wasn't able to throw any 1-2s, 1-2-3s, 1-2-2s. Um, and that's kind of where Archuleta really picked it up. Round four was stepping in the pocket whenever he wanted. Got mixed down briefly at the 3 minute mark. Didn't wasn't able to do much with it. A legal kick to the body stopped the fight. I don't know why Jason Herzog stopped the fight there. Even the commentary, John McCarthy and I believe Josh Thompson, um, commented on that. Mix was cutting off the cage wall, but he was getting pieced up. Was 2-2 going into round five, but Archuleta really put it on him in that fifth round, and he was vicious way going after the body, and that was something that Mix couldn't really handle. A lot of good hooks, mixing the jab, really good combinations to the body. I like, okay, working the body has become more of a thing over the last few years, but my whole time as a UFC fan, I feel like body strikes were heavily underrated before. I would say, the DC Stipe fight, even the second John Jones fight, where John Jones found out if you attack the body, that sets DC up to be, finished. And then he popped. We all know how that went. Um, we got a nice strap to end the round. Juan Archuleta wins 48-47 unanimous decision. But this is early on. This was a young Patchy mix, and he was able to rebound from it, as you saw. Now we move on to UFC 318. For some reason, this is the only image I could get of the fight, and when I put it on the slide, it turned into like 10p. I mean, 120p sounds insulting, but it's an interesting debut. He's coming in as a former Bellator champion against a number 10 guy, Mario Bautista, who we all know. Mario Bautista was on a really good run. Mario Bautista, before I say what I'm about to say, is very talented, and he is a problem for majority of the people in the bantamweight division, and I include Patchy Mix in that. But we went through Patchy Mix's last five. Won his last five, defended the Bellator belt, well, PFL Bellator belt. Mario Bautista, we know he robbed Jose Aldo, actively didn't try and fight him. Like, majority of the fights Jose Aldo had when he came back. Beat Ricky Simone by unanimous decision. Damone Blackshear. No, I'm not done. Beat Guido Canetti in the first round with a rear naked choke. Submitted him with an armbar. This is a very interesting fight. And I feel like even naturally with the casuals, you're probably going to see people picking against Mario Bautista regardless for the Aldo fight, as they should. We'll see if MMA Guru will actually own up on his bounty that he put on Batista. If you guys forget, he put out a 20K bounty for any fighter that can knock out Mario Batista after the Aldo win. But it's an interesting fight. I feel like Patchy Mix is able to get him down. He will have relative ease with Mario Batista. And I kind of see him winning by a unanimous decision. My thoughts may change, in the next few weeks. Ultimately, I will need to make my final predictions for the entire card. But I think it's a good fight for me. Now, we know the UFC doesn't really like pushing people that were made outside of the UFC, which basic basis, you want your guys to be on top. You don't want somebody else's guy to make it to the top. But if it happens with Patchy Mix, you have a guy who is marketable. You have a guy who is young and probably top five grappler in MMA, period. I've heard a lot of people say they believe he's the best grappler out there. Obviously, I don't think he's better than Hamza Chimaev. I don't think he's better than Israel Makachev or Arman Sarukian. But I do believe that when it comes to the bantamweight division, he can go toe to toe with any of these guys on the ground with what he's shown in Bellator. Then, if he's able to get past Mario Bautista, which I think he will do, you look at the current rankings, Maravi's champion. I threw Alexander Pantoja on there too. Because I do believe Pantoja should be the next guy fighting for the bantamweight belt. I think he should be fighting Marav at this pay-per-view. But the UFC is dead set on Sean O'Malley being their guy. Sean O'Malley is a star because we say he is a star. You got Petr Yan, who I think Petr Yan potentially gives him the hardest fight, I feel. Sean O'Malley, we know, kickboxer, will give him issues. But I feel Petr Yan, with his boxing stance, with the way he advances, what we saw in the Sean O'Malley fight, I think Young gives him a lot of issues. You got Umar, who he's trained with Umar. And a fight with Umar, I feel, was very interesting. I think it would be a preview to what potentially a Morale fight could be. And the fact that he's trained with Umar before. So he knows what he's going into. Vice versa with Umar. Corey Sandhagen, another difficult matchup for him. But I think he would really test Corey in the grappling. And if he's able to at least compete with Corey on the feet, that will be a major statement. Song Yadong, that will be a good fight. Figueredo, former flyweight champion, will be a good one from Marlon Vera. I would see him fighting down. And then the rest of these guys, unless he loses, I don't see him fighting Font Cejudo. Maybe I think he'll end up fighting Zahabi at some point. But I don't see him fighting down. Then, to end it off, I want to go over what I think are his toughest matchups. Number one, I already said it, Corey Sandhagen. I think it's a really fun fight, especially with what Corey did in his last fight against Davidson Figueiredo. Corey, we'll have to see if he's able to handle Patchy Mix on the ground. If Patchy Mix is able to get to him, consistently get him down, I don't think Corey has a chance. However, if as long as he is able to defend most of them, I like his chances on the feet. Then again, Patchy Mix has evolved on the feet. Patchy Mix, I believe, is younger too. Next fight, Umar. He's trained with him. Again, I think Umar will be very difficult for him. Umar has really good striking. We know what the last name means. He's coming off of the loss to Marab, which even though he lost, he looked really good in. It's just the fact that Marab had one of the best performances in bantamweight history on that night. But I don't know. You have to wonder how training with him will affect the fight. We're gonna get to the Marab fight, spoiler alert. But I think it's an interesting fight. He obviously has the reach. If his grappling is on the level of Nurmagomedov, at the least, he's the problem for Marab. And then I put Petr Yan. I put Petr Yan ahead of Umar because again, I feel the stand up to Petr Yan, the anti grappling of Petr Yan. Again, Marab was not able to get Yan down. Now, can Patchy Mix do it with a little extra height? Maybe. If he absolutely, if he is able to get Petr Yan down, again, that would be a major statement. And if he's able to have a highway performance against Yan, that would push him up, you know, the list of bantamweight goats. Now, obviously, it's different between a UFC goat and an MMA goat. I don't think Patchy Mix will have to go through the same route, like beat the same names. But again, with what he's coming in with, him only having one loss, if he's able to get through with these guys, these are major wins for his career, and they will be legacy defining. And then obviously, you got Marab. Now, You notice I left out one fight, the fight that was supposed to happen years ago, but we're gonna get to that. Marab is the toughest fight for anybody in bantamweight. I don't think anybody is going to disagree with me there. And honestly, I only see Marab losing this belt if he retires, which can happen soon, or if he moves up to 145, which there is talks of. Aljamain Sterling even said he'd be willing to move back down to bantamweight if Marab moves up. Which we know those guys train together, they're best friends. Hilarious on Instagram. Marab has one of the funniest Instagrams ever. But even if Patchy can come in, beat Corey, beat Jan, I would assume he, he would be at the most 2 fights away from the title. With a win over Mario Bautista, if it's a finish, I could see them moving up Patchy. Well, I mean, really, who else is left for Marab to be in the top of that division? Figueredo, he just lost. And then I saved this fight. Depending on his performance at UFC 316, Sean O'Malley is still a very tough fight for Patchy Mix. And I think when you look at star power, this is obviously the biggest fight you can do. Now, Sean O'Malley is a manufactured superstar. And again, the UFC calls him a superstar. Not many of us call him a superstar. He is a star. I get he has big gates, but keep in mind, he sold out the Sphere, which was the biggest event in UFC history. One of one. I'm moving the mic everywhere. You're not going to see anything like it. But it's been a few years removed from this fight being talked about. Patchy Mix has put in the work. Even with everything going on with PFL and what went on with PFL, Patchy Mix has really mixed his craft well. And although he lost that first fight, he lost that fight to Archuleta, I don't know, man. I don't see Sean having the grappling defense to deal with Mix. He did well against Morel. I like I have written up there. It genuinely depends on what version of Sean O'Malley we see at UFC 316 after a 8-year layoff. But it's probably the biggest strike for him. This is probably the second fight on his mind. I kind of think if I'm Patchy Mix, you know, for, oh yeah, overlooking fights or whatever, if I am Patchy Mix, the number one name I want to get to is Morel. The second name, Sean O'Malley. Even though I just shit on Sean O'Malley, it is the biggest fight for him. But I'm excited, man. There are a lot of guys. Well, there's a few more guys in the PFL or PFL Bellator that I'm waiting on to be signed to the UFC. Majority of the top guys are gonna come over here. We all know this, but I'm excited, man. Patchy Mix is no joke. Patchy Mix isn't a 38-year-old veteran. This is one of the best grapplers very early into his prime, coming into the UFC against, a guy in Mario Bautista, excluding the Jose Aldo fight, is a very dangerous fight for him. What we will have to see. I'm excited for his debut. Let me know in the comments down below What do you think about Patchy Mix coming into the UFC? What fights do you want to see from him? And how do you see him performing in his UFC debut? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. Later.